Hello, everybody. Welcome to an emergency edition of the Bucks Cream City Cast. This is CreamCityCentrals.com's weekly podcast, and we're going to be talking about the latest Milwaukee Bucks takes and giving you the latest going on in Milwaukee. This is an emergency cast, though, so we're going to be talking about the recent demise of the Bucks in the last few days. Stemming from the Giannis Antetokounmpo, a little bit of an altercation with the assistant coach Sweeney during the fourth quarter after Giannis wasn't very, very happy about what's going on right now with the Bucks. So I'm here once again with Andrew Goodman, writer over at Cream City Central, alongside me. So Andrew, let the people know what you have to say.
Yeah, very, very frustrating loss to say the least. But how many times have we said that this season, Dylan? It's like, we're stuck in this constant cycle as Bucks fans. It's like, how much misery could we really take before we're just like, all right, I've completely had it. Yeah, that game yesterday in Utah just sums up the fact that they've now lost 16 straight there in Salt Lake City. They haven't won since 2001 when Big Dog hit a game-winning three-pointer. It's just ridiculous. But what's clear to me is this defense just has to go. This scheme is just not working at all.
Yeah,
Ineffective.
You give up. Just look at the games this year. You've given up 120 points. How many times? Utah, Cleveland, Charlotte. That's all I'm think of right now. Maybe there's one or two more, but when the Bucks can't win when they give up 100 points, let alone 120 points.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. To address your question about the altercation or the mini altercation between Giannis Antetokounmpo and assistant coach Sean Sweeney, I don't know. That was a weird sequence. Giannis dribbled the ball off his foot, and Jazz picked it up, which led to an easy fast break bucket. And for that whole game, even before that sequence happened, it looked like Giannis was very, very frustrated with the lack of whistle he was getting from the refs.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this was like, frustration boiling over. But I will admit, when I first saw this on Twitter last night, I wasn't able to watch the game. But I saw a clip and I was like, this is very unlike Giannis. We all know he's an emotional player, but in his 4 years as a Milwaukee Buck, we haven't seen him be, this vocal towards a coach.
Yeah, and just like you were saying, it's a little uncharacteristic, but this is the first time that Giannis has had kind of the cojones and the pull on the team to do this. He's an MVP candidate. He is the future of the Bucks. The Bucks go where Giannis takes them, and I think we can all agree that in the Bucks community that this team goes as far as Giannis is going to take them. So it's really troubling when you see something like that, because a lot of things, I mean, he's mad about losing, and obviously he's a competitor. He's emotional. He wants to win, but it puts us in a situation where it's like, you think worst case scenario, stuff like this keeps happening. They keep losing. Is he going to want out? Are we going to be seeing the decision again with Giannis this time?
Oh man, you can only help but wonder. But you look at the Bucks roster, and they have some very, very talented players on that roster. Eric Bledsoe, Giannis, of course, Malcolm Brogdon, Eric Bledsoe now. There's no reason for them to be playing. Let's be honest, they're playing like a 50-loss team right now. They are not playing well at all.
Yeah, and it's not because, I don't know. You're right. The defensive schemes are just, they play high school defense, to be honest with you. Whether it's like we discussed this before, if you want to get into the specifics of it, their pick and roll defense is just atrocious. And, you have the Utah Jazz out there, which is, I believe, the sixth worst offense in the NBA. They were looking like the young Spurs out there. They were swinging that ball around. I'm telling you, Ricky Rubio was looking like Tony Parker out there.
You're totally right on that. And, their pick and roll defense this season is just unbelievably bad. Like as fans, we watch the game. Like, it's pretty obvious to us how bad it is. It should be obvious to the coaching staff how bad it is. This whole logistics of sending over someone on a screen and then doubling the ball handler. They were trapping Ricky Rubio countless times yesterday, which led to a wide open corner three for Donovan Mitchell, who hit six, pretty much ended the game for the Jazz by himself.
Yeah. And then I can't count how many times I saw Joe Ingles with a wide open three off of a bad transition. And, you know, the Bucks, they glorify themselves about how all this length they have, and but you still, you see Ingles, like you said, Mitchell, Rubio, they're getting wide open threes. Donovan Mitchell took 10 threes yesterday. And he's a rookie. I mean, he's a good shooter, and I'm not discrediting him at all. But if you're allowing a rookie 10 threes, it's impossible. You can't win like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Utah hit 18 3-pointers yesterday. That was a franchise record. And then Dallas, I think, was it 2 weeks ago, hit 19 threes, and that was a franchise record. And these are two teams that are at the bottom of the league in offensive efficiency. So it's like something's got to give. And, the Bucks defense, when Jason Kidd first arrived in Milwaukee in 2014, 2015, it was actually pretty good. They had a defensive rating of 102.2, but it's just gotten worse ever since. The next year in 2015, it was 108. Then it climbed last year to 109, and now it's at 109 this year again. So obviously, we can see how bad their defense is. It should be pretty obvious to the coaching staff that everyone in the NBA has figured out the Bucks now. The Dallas Mavericks and Utah Jazz are torching us.
Yeah. And you're right. With the movement on defense is really causing an issue, and mostly because if you look at especially the Utah game last night, one, two, three, four, six players last night got in double figures for Utah, and the only way that happens is with the moving in the ball. And if teams are, and you're right, and when we were talking about the pick and roll, Ricky Rubio was. I don't know how many hockey assists he had last night, but I'm sure he had a crazy amount because when he was getting penetration, he'd find someone open. They'd have a late run out, try to run him off the line. One pass, the guy's open. And I think that lies a lot with just the coaching staff. And I mean, if you've been on Buck's Twitter at all lately, there's been a large uproar for Jason Kidd's head. And I know you've been one of the leaders of the bandwagon, Andrew, and I know that you're ready for the next step. And I don't know, what do you give Bucks Nation here your pitch to fire Jason Kidd?
Yeah, it's just unacceptable to underachieve with this roster, especially with the leap that Giannis has made into superstardom, top 5 player in the NBA, MVP candidate, possibly frontrunner for the MVP. It's just completely unacceptable for Jason Kidd of the Milwaukee Bucks to be playing this poorly. Granted, I get Eric Bledsoe still getting acclimated, but this is just ridiculous. Like, this is not encouraging at all.
No, it's not. And if I have to back it up, also, it's I mean, not saying we're Golden State, but Mark Jackson's message ran a little short out there. I mean, yeah, maybe he got the short end of the stick because he missed Curry's kind of breakout year, but I mean, all good messages come to the end, I think. And if you don't have teams buying into you, he's never really won in Milwaukee, which is the problem. I understand they're rebuilding, but there's never been a consistent winning streak. I don't know what the longest winning streak they have had since he's been here was, but I can't expect it to be more than 4 games, 4 or 5 maybe at the most.
No, you're right. And you look how, I don't want to say the East is considerably weaker this year, but let's be honest, some teams are off to a hotter start than, they usually are. And that's obviously going to even out as the season goes on. But let's be honest, the East is pretty weak this year. And we've touched on this many times before. This is the window for the Bucks to compete now. They haven't, as a team, they haven't made any significant improvement since the 2014-2015 season, since Jason Kidd took over for then coach Larry Drew after the year we won 15-67.
You're right. And If you look at the teams in the standings right now that are ahead of them, just in the immediate, Philadelphia, Indiana, New York, Washington, all teams that we should beat, all teams that I think we're better than. We should be right now, at least. I mean, maybe Philadelphia would be better than us in a couple years, but right now we're better than them. New York, that's inexcusable. Indiana, inexcusable. It's just the level of their expectations for themselves. I honestly, here's a hot take for you. I think the Bucks fans have way more expectations and believe in the Bucks a lot more than the Bucks do themselves, because that must be it, because they don't show up. They don't show up for a lot of these games. And
That's an
you know
excellent
what?
point.
They play the Kings coming up next, and gosh, I'm terrified for that game because it's just another meaningless game apparently. And I understand it's in the West. They're on the road. They're on a road trip, but you got a young team. There shouldn't be legs shouldn't be an issue. I understand you have a couple injuries, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent point you just made. And depth, whatever, Dellavedova and Teletovic, they contribute a little bit, but it's not like you have them too, and you're 5 games better than you were before they went down. And they're just losing to teams that they should beat. It's the bottom line. It's simple. And before the Bucks went on this West Coast road trip, we predicted what would happen, and now it's looking like they're in pretty grave danger of going 1-3 on the road trip.
Yeah, and you can't really look at John Horst. It's not his fault. He made a big move, big decision, and there's if they keep playing like this, there's going to be a lot more decisions that they're going to have to make because I mean, Middleton, he had 9 points last night. Like, especially in a game like that where it's so high scoring, you got to knock. He went, what was it? He took 15 shots and he made
I
four
think it
of
was like
them.
4-15, yeah, and
Four of
he
15.
he had more turnovers than field goals made, which whenever that happens, it's almost guaranteed the Bucks are going to lose for
Right.
sure. And one problem I have with Chris Middleton, and I'm sure all of us Bucks fans do, is his game the last week. It's just been so selfish. A lot of isolation plays, driving to the basket, a lot of unnecessary post ups, turning away from the basket, kind of like Kobe-esque fadeaway jump shots. It's like, come on, Chris. Like, we all know that's not your game, and he's a huge part to this Bucks team. I'm a big fan of Chris Middleton. No secret in that, but he's just playing very selfishly the last week.
And what separates the Bucks maybe from like a team like Golden State or an elite team in the league is we don't really have a consecutive like a second scorer that I feel like can, I'm going to get 25, 20 every night. Chris Middleton could give you 40 one night and the next night he'll give you 9, which he did. He just did. So it's just like you can't be doing. I understand like everyone has an off day, and I'm not saying that he's not human, but you have to have consistency. That's how teams gain success and get momentum is consistency. You can't. The only one that's been there's been 2 people that have been consistent this season, and it's been Giannis and Tony Snell. The only 2 consistent people have on this team that show up every game and bring their lunch pail and are ready to go.
Yeah, getting back to Tony Snow, what do you think of him getting moved to the bench in favor of Gary Payton the second in that Utah game?
I mean, I don't really I think I know that I heard on the broadcast that they wanted to have him to guard Ricky Rubio because he's a little bit better of a defender, and they were going to slide Eric Bledsoe over to Donovan Mitchell, but it doesn't really make sense because Gary Payton played 7 minutes and he has a nagging ankle injury that he suffered against Phoenix, so it just really didn't make sense. So I mean, Malcolm Brogdon played his normal 26 minutes, but it was just kind of interesting how they went with that set, and I don't know if they were trying to throw the Jazz off or something, but it really didn't make sense. And I like Gary Payton. I think he can actually contribute on this team if he's in the right situation, but having him start is probably not the smartest decision.
Yeah, and I also think I saw this floating around there too that Jason Kidd was kind of using this move as a wake up call for Tony Snell, but I get that. But at the same time, the Bucks are a team that's struggling with continuity and an identity. They don't have an identity, so why are you trying to fix something that's clearly not going to work? And if you're just going to play him 7 minutes and play Tony Snell, how many minutes he played? Even
He
probably
played 37.
yeah. It's you're starting some guy with an ankle injury who was in a walking boot after the Phoenix Suns game in
Mhm.
order to send a wake up call to Tony Snell into a team that already doesn't have any consistency, like you said. It's a head scratcher.
Yeah, and there's the teams that are in the most turmoil are the teams that are changing around all the time. There hasn't been the same starting lineup for the Bucks for more than 2 weeks. They change it all the time, and their bench play is the same way. Liggins played 8 minutes, and I'm not saying DeAndre Liggins is the second coming of Sean Livingston or whatever, but I mean, come on now. Like, if you're gonna back some guy, you gotta back him. You can't just be throwing out whoever. It just doesn't make sense to me. You can't be running 8 men, 8 guys deep just because Telly and Deli are hurt. No, you got to next man up. To be honest with you, Giannis played 38 minutes again after sitting.
Yeah, that's another point that should be addressed is the fact that Chris Middleton and Giannis. I think Giannis is number one in minutes per game leading, and I think Chris Middleton is third, and LeBron is number two. And what is like Giannis played the entire third quarter and a bit of the fourth quarter before it got blown out, and this he's already nursing a bad knee tendonitis. Why are you risking further injury and playing him in a game that was decided already?
Yeah, and another thing is that offensively, I think the Bucks have a serious problem when it comes to spacing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a lot of it is because of Giannis's limitations as he's the main scorer and he kind of just needs to go do his own thing to get his shot. But they got to start getting more. This is another reason why I think Jason Kidd his situation needs to be addressed because you got to get it more creative ways for him to score. Every bucket he scores is, I mean, it looks easy on TV, but it's a tough bucket always. He's spinning, Euro stepping, doing whatever. I haven't seen Giannis get an easy bucket literally all season if it wasn't in transition.
Yeah, that's the comparison. Jason Kidd Dibs 2.0, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's definitely something to look out for. I mean, if you're looking for some pluses, I think Eric Bledsoe. I think people need to put it to rest that the Eric Bledsoe situation is kind of was a bad move because I
No,
think it's a good. I think it was a great move because you got a better basketball player, and that's what it comes down to. You can get into all the analytics and you can get into all the garbage and stuff like that, but listen, if you have better basketball players on the court, you're more likely to win.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and it's up to those players to play to their level every night. And if they're not, it's first rests on the players. And if the players aren't changing it, then it goes to the coach. So it's all about accountability and it's about holding the team accountable. So who's doing that is my
Yeah,
question.
that's a great question because countless times again after the Utah Jazz and these press conferences, Jason Kidd will always cite lack of effort, lack of energy, lack of hustle. Like, could you throw your team under the bus anymore and instead, take blame? Oh, I failed to make in-game adjustments. I failed to adjust to what the opposing team did, so on and so forth. You can only use that excuse so much before it just gets exhausting. And I'm tired of seeing him say that.
And I find it interesting how Jason Kidd that was his game, effort and energy and motion and passing. But I've never seen a team that is so different to how their coach actually played.
And that gets back to the question, is he fit to run this Milwaukee Bucks team? Is he going to help them take the next step?
I know you're ready for him to get out the door now, but what would you have to say is the bottom line? How far out of it and when would you get rid of them?
Well, okay, let's say worst case scenario, the Bucks finish this year under 500. So let's say in between like 2 to 4 games under 500, which let's be honest, they still might make playoffs with that record, depending on
Yeah.
things going the East. I think that's looking like a situation where, nah, it's not happening. That's not going to fly anymore.
I'll even take it like this. If the Bucks do not win a playoff series this year, you need to find the coach that'll get them to win a playoff series. Because that has to be the benchmark. There's nowhere you can't go up all this regular season jazz. Like you need to get in the playoffs, obviously, and have a favorable seed. But if in a wide open Eastern Conference, if you can't win a playoff series, that's with this roster, that's effort. And Jabari Parker will be back. That's effort and that's intensity and everything like that. So you have that's my barometer. You have to win a playoff series no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to winning a playoff series, last time the Bucks won a playoff series was in 2001 when they lost in the conference finals. So who's gonna be that guy that comes in and really takes charge and helps this team take the next step, which they should have done like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you know, all great teams don't really always find their leaders right away. Like I said, with Mark Jackson, and then with David Blatt in Cleveland, there was a couple coaches like that, and I'm starting to think Jason Kidd might be the next one in that line. I mean, I don't know. I mean, hey, Mark Jackson wants to come coach Milwaukee. I think that would be someone that could really make a huge impact. He loves the game. He has high intensity. He doesn't go for any of that BS and not do an effort. So, I mean, maybe that's an answer. I mean, I don't know, but
The answer certainly isn't Jason Kidd. That's for
yeah,
sure.
I mean, I'm starting to come to your side of the fence there, Andrew. I'm getting close, but so we're doing a new thing here on Cream City Cast. We got a couple of mailbag questions. If you have any questions for us that you want to answer on podcast, you can hit us up on Twitter. You can hit me up at Dylan Piccolo 35.
Yeah, so the first one I got here for myself was from Curious at Falls, Falls Falcon. And his question is it too early to be concerned about Bledsoe fitting in? My answer is no. Let's remember Bledsoe, before getting dealt to Milwaukee, he was an outcast in Phoenix for about 2.5 weeks. So he's definitely out of shape, and it's going to take time for him to fit in. Luckily, they got him early enough in the season where they can afford to jumble around lineups and whatnot, but I'm not concerned at all. I think things will start to fall into place. Eric Bledsoe looks very good, but his jump shot certainly hasn't been great, and I think that's due in large part to tired legs and conditioning. So I think we'll start to see a lot more, Eric Bledsoe with a spry in his step soon. And next question
Yeah.
is from John Turner at Grandpa Turner. His question is simply, how long is kid's leash for us? And for me, harps on that point. You said they don't win a first round series, or they're meddling around 500 or under. I think he's done.
Yeah, I guess as we just finished up, I say I don't think they fire him in season. I don't think the owners will do that. I think they're kind of in bed with him until the end of the season at least. And I think if they don't win a playoff series, I think that's when you try to make a decision. Because I mean, if they don't have a great regular season and they win a playoff series and make some noise in the second rounds of the playoffs, I mean, I can see justifiably keeping him, but I don't know if that's going to happen. They should. They have the roster too, but that's kind of where I lie with that one.
Yeah. How about the Bledsoe one? How do you feel about Bledsoe fitting in, Malcolm
I
Brogdon going to the bench?
I honestly think he fits in really well. I think Brogdon's kind of embraced the role off the bench, and the thing with Malcolm Brogdon is like he's just a gamer. He's a baller. Whenever you want him to get into the game, there's he's ready to play. His production really hasn't dropped that much, if any. And his defense is good, and he gives that second unit actually a little bit of life, and he can actually play in tandem with Bledsoe, and it actually works out pretty well. Their spacing isn't too bad when it comes to the guards, at least in my opinion. And he had 30 last against Phoenix. I mean, I don't know if he was trying to get a little revenge. He took 26 shots to get it, which is kind of a lot. But, I mean, he's definitely an upgrade. And just having a player like him on the roster, I think that you make it fit, sort of, when you get a player like that.
Yeah. I got one more question. Literally just popped in my phone like 2 minutes ago. It's from Lewis. He wants to know what is stopping the Bucks from being a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference.
If I had to say, like, right now, 3 things, I'd say intensity, just showing up every day and wanting to win, because they can say they want to win and, oh man, all the basketball cliches you want to give and spurt out, but it comes down to you're better than a lot of these teams that you're losing to. 2, I'd say the defense. You got to go and get in a shell defense or something and start working in practice, because it's just unacceptable giving up 120 plus points to the Utah Jazz and Charlotte Hornets, and that's just unacceptable. And 3, I'd say the spacing. I don't know if it's getting a wider court or something like that, but you got to figure out a more creative way to get Giannis shots and try to get less ISO situations for Chris Middleton.
Yeah, and for me, simple answer to that would be part of the problem is, role identification. I think some of the players on this team are really struggling to find their role. And again, that has to do with, changing the lineup night in, night out, not having continuity, to say the least. Another point would be lack of accountability. I think as a team, the Bucks they all need to take responsibility. Everyone, that goes from the coaches, assistant coaches, to the players. They need to take accountability for what is wrong, or else it could get ugly. If there's no leadership, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think Chris Middleton needs to accept the fact that he's not going to be the second option when Jabari Parker comes back. When Jabari Parker comes back, he's going to be the second option, because you give him the ball, he's going to go to the rack. He can get to the line at will. He's very good at creating contact, getting to the line. His jumper is much improved. And because of this ACL injury, I don't want to say he's not going to drive to the rim anymore, but I think he's now using this rehab to focus on his jump shot, be more perimeter oriented, which is what the NBA is going towards. So we can already see Chris Middleton start, playing selfish, and I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, and I think that I honestly think that Jabari is going to help with this spacing issue a lot, because I think he's going to be similarly athletic as he was with the ACLs, but I think also that his shooting is much needed, and he's a lot more athletic than anyone we have right now playing the 4, and especially off the bench, in my opinion. And and people actually, like, when he's on the court, they worry about him being a scorer. So it's really up to Chris Middleton, in my opinion, to prove that he's actually worth being the second scorer. But I think Jabari Parker might slide into that role, like you said. But I have a couple questions also. First one's from @Aiden Aarons on Twitter. He asked, would you be willing to trade Thon Maker to get someone of the caliber of DeAndre Jordan? Now, DeAndre Jordan's a free agent this summer, so I don't know how that trade would necessarily work out, but I think I would be definitely willing to give up Thon if it meant getting a center of his caliber, though, because I'm not necessarily sold on Thon Maker. I understand he's been working with KG, but it really hasn't been translating to the game. I mean, he did play well against Phoenix, but I don't know. I think that I would move him for the right deal.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. That's part of the problem why the Bucks are struggling. They traded Greg Monroe for Eric Bledsoe, which great trade, but then that leaves the Bucks with another hole of not having a backup center, which is why Giannis is playing so many damn minutes now. And I think they need to address the situation of getting a backup 5. But for the right price, I would certainly move Thon Maker for sure. I don't think he's untouchable at this point.
I don't think he is either. And I one thing about Thon Maker is he doesn't really have like, I don't think he has necessarily the feel for the game all the way there yet. I think he's still young, and I think, he did start playing basketball relatively late, and has kind of grown into his body, and he's getting a lot stronger. So, I mean, I'm gonna give him some time, but it'll be all right. And then I have one last question. This is from at O'Bannon22. He says, of Delhi, Telly, or Henson, which one would you prefer to be moved to make cap room for next season?
Definitely Matthew Dellavedova for sure. Because you have Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah.
No, there's like no need for him anymore.
Yeah, I think when they did sign Delhi, it was before Brogdon came onto the scene, so it was kind of a little counterintuitive to sign Delhi to that contract. I think Telly actually has somewhat of a role on this team. I don't think it's in necessarily in the capacity that it is now, but as a shooter coming off the bench, I think especially with the way this league is going, if he can come into a game and play maybe 12, 13 minutes and knock down some threes when this team is really good, I think that could be pretty nice because I mean, like I mentioned before, his contract decreases as the years go, and he's a decent enough shooter where I think that he has a role, and I think Henson, until they make a big move for a center, if they do, is kind of who they're going to go with in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you that Mirza Teletovic actually has a pretty important role in this team because he's one of the only few that provide floor spacing. Because it's known around the league that he'll chuck it up from anywhere on the floor. So it'll be good to have him back when he comes back from his knee surgery. And he also plays really well alongside Giannis. So I think you definitely have to have him on the floor when he's healthy.
One thing about Telly is I think he wears 35. He's the European Kevin Durant, I think, and he thinks in his eyes,
Oh, he wishes.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I always think as he's shooting. He thinks he's the European Kevin Durant. But I guess that's it for this emergency edition of the Cream City Cast. Like I said before, if you have any mailbag questions you want to ask us, you can hit me up at Dylan Piccolo 35. You can hit Andrew up at Andrew_Goodman 3. You can message us actually at Cream City Central Twitter account. It's at Cream City Central. Check out our stuff on our website. We got a lot of cool Buck stuff coming up, and we got a couple people on the Fire Kid bandwagon. So if you're on that movement, Andrew might be a nice follow for you as well. So appreciate you coming out and listening to us, and should get another one out this week, just a regular one. So all right, thank you very much.